the trauma of losing my dad plus war on top of that, all the things that had previously happened to me.
Right.
We were just trying to numb ourselves. The whole that was there that Jesus should feel was so much, it felt so much bigger because of all the things but we were ignoring it. We both knew what the answer was, but we were like just pushing God away, trying to put other things in there.
I am sure there'll never be anyone like you. You're strong like your father, even when you were scared. When I was in trouble, you never left me there. And you love like your mother, like there's nothing to lose. You're an unsung hero, so I sing this song for you.
Are you in need of a passport in a hurry? Look no further. Global Passport Express is here to help. With our efficient and reliable services, we can process your passport in as quick as 7 days. That's right, just 7 days. And that's not all. We specialize in visas for many countries, including popular destinations like China, India, and so much more. Whether you're planning a family vacation, a business trip, or your next mission trip, Global Passport Express is your one-stop solution for all your passport and visa needs. So why wait? Reach out to us today at 210-375-7525 to speak with one of our friendly and knowledgeable representatives. They will guide you through the process and answer any questions you may have. You can also visit our website at www.globalpassportexpress.com for more information and to start your application online. It's quick, easy, and convenient. Mention this ad and receive 10% off any of our services. Don't let time constraints hold you back from your travel dreams. Trust Global Passport Express to deliver your passport fast, hassle-free, and with a smile. Global Passport Express, your passport and visa experts. Get ready to explore the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unsung Heroes. I am your host, Ryan Half, in Cincinnati, Ohio, where my Bengals play opening game tomorrow against the Patriots. We're going to win. So I'm just going to put that out there for all of my Florida friends that don't believe in my Bengals. We know what's going to happen. But today we have joining us Pastor Joseph and Mary Harmon, and they're in Cape Coral, Florida. So we'd like to welcome you to the show, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Say hello. So I appreciate you guys coming on. How long have you guys been in Florida?
Since December.
Yeah,
Oh, so you guys are just not even there a year, huh?
Yeah, we just got here.
Nice. Well, Pastor Joseph, I appreciate you giving some of your time to come on. If you wouldn't mind, I would love for you to share with our audience why Mary has been an unsung hero to you and to your ministry and to your calling.
Well, I hope I can give good enough words for it, but I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is, when we, in our fellowship, we put there's so much emphasis on getting sent out. And when we get sent out, we get on, we go on the stage and it's kind of our moment and everything like that. This is our, I think, 6th time being sent out. My wife has never complained about that. And it could probably, it's something that she could easily do, being sent, 6 different places within the 10 years that actually it's been longer than that now. It's been about 12 years now that we've been in ministry. But I could see how that wears on her, but you wouldn't tell that for, talking to her, because she's glad to go. Like every time we've ever had a calling from God to go somewhere, she's always been willing to do that. Something that she's always aspired to, or wanted, I should say, is a home. And, after, moving over and over was able to buy a home or anything like that. And I am happy to say that we finally bought a home here in Florida, but that was something, it was really exciting for us. But it's something that nobody knew that she really wanted, that in her heart, that's, something that she always aspired to have comfort, comfort of having a home and everything like that. Yes. We're, like I said, in our fellowship, we're about that moment, we send out workers into the field, which is awesome. But so oftentimes, like if it's in a particular situation like ours, where it's, every 2 years we're moving, it puts a lot of stress on our wives, and to see her stand strong through all of that, just really touches my life, because, I can get through a lot myself. Sorry, I'm not supposed to get all teary-eyed or whatever, but I really do appreciate my wife.
It's the best place for it, though.
But she's always been willing to follow me, so that's one of the main things, just touches my heart, is that no matter what, she's willing to go. But the other thing that probably people wouldn't know about her is that in the low times, in the low times of my life, she was the one to like push me, And sorry, I'm really not trying to cry. This is ridiculous. I had no intentions to crying. But anyway, my wife, I've had a lot of, as pastors, that, I know we put a facade on, sometimes we want to look strong, and we're strong, and it's true that we are, but there's times that we need maybe a kick in the pants, and, we gotta go outreach and something like that. And maybe we're just not feeling it that day. And my wife has been there to say, you know what, we got to go do this, which has really helped me in my relationship with God too, because it really puts me in a place where I have to seek internally with God and myself. And she makes me stronger because of that. And I'm just so proud of her. I'm just so proud of her for all that she does for me. There's a lot to say, but really, I just want to say thank you to my wife, because without her, I don't think I could do this. That's what I have. So, sorry. Didn't mean to cry the whole time, but.
Amen. No, that was absolutely beautiful. I appreciate you sharing, because I think sometimes we need to hear that too, huh, Mary?
Yeah.
But I appreciate your time, Pastor Joseph. I thank you for sharing some of your heart with us about your wife, and just what a blessing she is to you and your family. And I appreciate you being here. But we're going to release you now, so we can jump into Miss Mary's story and find out just all the cool things God's done in her life.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, that was absolutely beautiful, wasn't it? I felt myself starting to tear up a little bit. I was like, God, thank you for this couple. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for them.
Yeah. I'm fighting it.
Go ahead.
I'm fighting back tears myself.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into your story. We'll backtrack a little bit. Can you share with the audience just kind of where you grew up, how you grew up, what your foundation, your home life was like for you? Did you grow up with a religious or Christian background, or how was that in your household?
Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian home. I guess at first it wasn't. When I was probably about 4, 5 maybe, my mom started going to church and she got saved, and my dad was just like, what's going on over there? What's going on at this church? And she says that he would see her get dressed and put on her makeup and just looking really pretty going to the church. And so he's like, well, what's going on over there? Is there a guy over there? So he started going to church. He gets radically saved. I vaguely remember just like some things of my home life before that. It was very chaotic. There were drugs, alcohol, and stuff like that. And just being so little, I can remember those things very faintly. But the majority that I remember, I was raised in a Christian home. My dad got radically saved, and he went to their seminary there at the church, and he became a pastor. So I was pretty much just raised a pastor's kid. Mm-hmm. We were poor, but it was a very good home life, I think. And then.
And this was in Michigan, correct?
Yes, in Detroit, Michigan. That's where I grew up at. Detroit, Michigan. It
and
was
do you
me.
have siblings?
Yes, it was me, my brother, and we were the only ones growing up for a long time. And I think at 14, I want to say, is when my mom had my sister. And then there were other kids that were already out of the house when I was born. So I grew up like the oldest. But there's actually 9 of us. And one was from my dad from previous before meeting my mom. So he's like a lot older. So I didn't meet him until I was a lot older. And that's pretty much it as far as siblings.
So what kind of plans or dreams did you have for yourself? Like as a young girl, did you have your life planned out? Like we'll get into it later. You are military, former military. Was that a plan or was that just
no,
not when you were young? Was that not a dream?
No, I did do ROTC in high school, but that was just a thing that I did because I was interested in being on the rifle team. But my dad was former military and he was field artillery. I wanted to be a veterinarian growing up. And so I want to say that I was trying to follow Christ up until I was 12. Had said a sinner's prayer, had decided that I wanted Jesus to be part of my life up until I was 12. And then somewhere around that time, for whatever reason, I got tired of Christianity. I don't really know what changed it. Whatever reason in my little mind, I was like, well, I'm just going to start living how I want to live. And so probably around 14, I got really interested in boys, and that just took me someplace crazy because when I was all the way from elementary to middle to high school, I was like bullied a lot. And I had to fight a lot in school. And so I feel like even though I had a father in my home and even though my mom and dad were telling me that I was beautiful, for whatever reason, I did not believe that about myself, probably because of the bullying and the outside people telling me other things were true. And so when I was 14, I was very developed or whatever. And so I was getting attention from boys and grown men, and I kind of went crazy. I did want to be a wife one day because I didn't grow up in a broken home. I didn't see very much of a broken home. I knew friends who had broken homes, but for me, that was just like my mom and dad, they were married forever. I'm going to have to be a wife one day. And so I did want that. And so I feel like I was chasing that security of being a wife and white picket fence. And I was young, so I was believing all the things that the boys were telling me.
Right.
And then they never stuck around, except one. One did stick around, and he was very abusive. He ended up staying around, and he was abusive. He ended up introducing me to being trafficked, and it was not good. It was a very bad scene. And he introduced me to alcohol and marijuana at the time. There was actually a time when we were fighting, and he got a rifle, and he was just like, "I'm just tired of you, so we're just done." And so he fired it at me at point blank range, and it must have been I know it was the grace of God that the bullet hit the wall. And so he dropped his rifle and he just starts crying, and I'm just like, wow, what just happened? And so I'm crying and he's crying, and he's like, "I'm sorry." And he always said that he was sorry. And for whatever reason, I was always like, "Okay, I'll take you back," which now in hindsight was ridiculous. But a young girl, I was just like, "No, I love him, and we're going to get married, and we're going to start a family together, and it'll be different." And it was never different. One day I actually came home, and home. It was just a place that we were in together. and he had a girl there. And for whatever reason, I guess I was just done. So I was just like, because I'm done with this and it hurts so bad, I'm just done with life. So I left, and I ended up taking a bunch of pills in front of my friends. They didn't believe that I was going to do it. And I took a lot of prescription pills, and they were just like, just walk around and you'll be fine. The next thing that I remember was walking through a field, and then I don't remember anything else from there. The next thing I know, I was waking up in a hospital, and they told me that it was 2 weeks later, and that they ended up putting me in a medical induced coma so that the medication, in hopes of saving my life, so the medication could kind of run through its course while still minimizing the damage. And my mom says that I came back to the house and that I was acting weird. And so they were just like, what are you doing? What did you take? And I refused to tell them, they said. And then they said that they couldn't understand what I was saying. So then they took me to the hospital. And I guess my mom and dad were there just at my bedside praying constantly. And they said that I would sit up and like just cuss them out while they were praying. Obviously, we know that that was something that was demonic at that time, but
right.
I'm just so very thankful for their prayers. But the crazy part is that I remember waking up angry. I woke up angry that I was still here. I woke up angry that...
So you woke up angry that you actually woke up.
Yeah. I woke up angry that I actually woke up. And I also woke up a little bit confused because my mom had shared with me a near-death experience that she had, and she actually felt like she went to heaven. But when I was in the coma, I just remember darkness. And so I was just like, well, why? Like I said the sinner's prayer before. Like, why was it darkness for me? And she felt like she went to heaven when she had her near-death experience. And then, so fast forward a little bit after that, and it was a recovery. But fast forward a little bit, and my dad said, you can't sit here and just do nothing with your life. Because basically I was just doing nothing with my life. So he said, either you go, or you go get your GED and go to college or something. So I ended up getting my GED, and I went to the military because I knew that I needed to get away.
If we can backtrack a little, when you
16.
So 16 was when you were in the abusive relationship?
Yes.
And
14 to 16.
Yeah, I'm genuinely sorry for the horror that you went through. We don't have to talk about the trafficking if that's something that's just done and in the past, but if you want to share a little bit with how being from a Christian home and even a pastor's daughter, how did you get through those couple years of that kind of horror that you were living?
I feel like it was witchcraft. Honestly, like somehow there was some kind of a hold that he had over me at the time. I've looked into that type of scenario before, like kind of tried to figure it out myself. And they say that the more that you try to leave, the more and come back, the more helpless you feel to leave. Like you don't feel like you have the ability to separate yourself. Like you're ingraining that in your brain. And so with the trafficking, that was like I'm going to kill you if you don't go and do this type of situation. There was a lot of physical abuse that went into that.
Was this man a lot older than you, or?
No, I think he might have been 2 years older than me at the time. He had a lot of influence from older brothers of what to do. I feel like they also did similar things with their significant others. So I wouldn't say wives,
At
because
that time, were you right? At that time, were you able to talk to your parents about what was going on, or did they have no idea what was happening in your life?
They just thought that I was sneaking out of the house all the time and that I would be gone for days at a time. They knew that I was out of control, but at a certain point, I feel like they just were like, we just have to pray that she comes back to God. So
Right. So did they know the extent of what you were going through, or did that come out later, like with having a weapon shot at your face, the
I don't think
things you were living? Did they even know the extent, or was that like a secret you were hiding?
that was just something that I just kept to myself. I think I told my mom as an adult about the firing the weapon thing, but it wasn't until I was married and I was a Christian because it was a testimony to me, her prayers. And so I joined the military so I took the GED test at 16 and I joined the military at 17.
How were you able to break away from that relationship?
Honestly, so the change of scenery took me away, but then as soon as I came back, I ended up coming back to him. As soon as I came back from training. So I was in training for, I want to say 6 months. And then I ended up, because I was in the military, I only was able to join the reserves because I was 17. My mom was just like, no, I'll sign for the reserves and that's about it. And so I was just like, okay, fine. I wanted to go active, but I ended up coming back and getting my own place. And he ended up moving into my place with me. And it wasn't until, so let me pause there. My dad actually got diagnosed with cancer, got diagnosed with stomach cancer during that time. And our house burned down. So our house burned down, and then I ended up having to get a place. And so they were in an apartment, and I was back and forth between their place and my apartment, and because he would kind of take over my apartment sometimes. And then I was just like, okay, this is crazy. So I signed up to be deployed to Iraq. But they denied me signing up because my unit, they needed volunteers. And I was like, well, I'll go. And they ended up saying no, which in hindsight was good because I got more time that I was able to visit with my dad. And then I did get deployed. And as soon as we got mobilized, mobilized is just where you start your training to be able to go overseas. If you're a reservist, you kind of got to make sure that your training is still good. And so I got mobilized to go overseas, and I was there in Mississippi, and I got a phone call that my dad passed away in Mississippi.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. And so I took that extremely hard. I asked him before I left, I don't know, I was still a kid, so it was just like, Dad, if I leave and I come back, are you going to be here? And he said, I'll see you. And I said, but are you going to be here? And he's like, I'll see you wear that combat patch. And I was just like, okay. So in my mind, I experienced loss of relatives before, but nothing like that had ever happened before. So I was just like, okay, he'll be here.
Right.
He'll be here when I get back. And especially because while my dad was not a part of our fellowship, I feel like the way that he and my mom raised me was a very good foundation to assimilate into this fellowship because they taught me about speaking in tongues. They taught me on laying hands on the sick. People would call my dad because they needed him to come pray on a demon-possessed person, or they would call my dad to come to the hospital and pray. So I saw him pray on people that had cancer or horrible diseases, and God would heal them. So I'm just like, okay, well, he'll be here when I get back. But he ended up passing away when I was mobilized. And so they let me go back, but they only let me go for 3 days. and that was not long enough for his funeral. So I ended up not being able to go to the funeral. And a lot of people said I probably could have fought that, but I just kept hearing in my head, like my dad's voice saying, go back, because they did threaten me with AWOL and stuff like that.
Right.
I felt like he would have wanted me to do that. But it did. So I did end up deploying for 12 months, and it did get me away from him because I called my house. At the time I was buying a house before I mobilized. And so after my dad passed away, I was able to get my mom and my brother and my sister into my house, but he was also the abusive boyfriend was also in that house. And so obviously he didn't do anything with my brother there. I called and talked to my mom after I got back to my mobilization training. My little sister said, "Can I talk to my sister?" And so my mom's like, "Yeah, I think she's like 5 at the time." And my sister says, "Your boyfriend had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of girls at the house." And I was just like, oh.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was the distance or what it was, the fact that he did that with my family there, or that my dad had just passed away and my dad constantly was asking me, please don't be with him and don't marry him. And
right.
Like, it was one of the last messages that he gave to my mom to give me was not to marry him. And so I don't know if it was a combination of all, like what combination of those things it was, but I was just like, that's okay. I don't like him anymore. And so that's when I began to just say, I'm just going to focus on myself. I'm not going to.
Your military career. What year was, so you were in the Army, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What year did you deploy?
So that would have been 2008 to 2009. Yeah, 2008 to 2009.
Almost 15 years ago.
Yeah.
What was that like for you deploying? Was that what you needed, do you think, to just kind of hit a reset? Did you, when you went over there, did you kind of get your head clear from being with that abusive person, or did you still continue on how you were living back at home overseas?
So I wasn't able to because, like I said, he kind of introduced me to alcohol and marijuana, and those things were not available overseas. I went to Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is a dry country. So even though the military will let you drink in some countries, they won't let you if it's against the national custom.
Right.
So I wasn't able to do any of those things over there. And I was also faced with possible not returning home. So that also made me kind of think, like, what are you doing with your life type situation.
Right.
And so when I was overseas, MySpace was the thing. And so I was just on MySpace and I would get friend requests and I would approve or deny them. And this is a debate between me and my husband, but he sent me a friend request. I sent him a friend request. At the time, we had both gotten out of abusive relationships. His was emotional abuse and mine was more physical and stuff. But we both kind of were just like, maybe we can find a friend, because we didn't want to start relationships again.
Right. Was he Army as well?
Yes. Actually, when either he sent the friend request or I sent the friend request, whichever it was, we both thought we were in the same country. But he was actually deployed in Iraq at the time.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, so we both could tell the other one was deployed, but we didn't notice which country it was. And then when we found out we were in different countries, we were like, this is perfect. So, because we were like, at least I was anyway, I thought it was good because we can't meet. because we're in different countries.
Right. Well, I thank you both for your service. I appreciate that. My husband's military as well. So we appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Giving your life to that, portion of your life to that. So what did you actually do in the military? What was your MOS?
I was an automated logistical specialist. So I dispatched vehicles for the motor pool and ordered supplies and maintained the warehouse. But while I was overseas, they had me doing a lot of other things other than just that.
Mm-hmm.
They had me doing tower guard duty, detainee operations, escorting locals onto the base. There's a funny story that I have about that, actually. When I would escort the locals onto the base, they would actually ask me about Jesus. And here I am, a backslidden pastor's kid, and I'm like risking everything to get one of them a Bible, like, and to kind of answer their questions.
God was already putting like the missionary call on your life.
Yeah, that's funny. I haven't thought about it like that, but yeah.
Did you ever get caught? Did anything ever happen with that, or?
No, actually, one of the guys was so grateful, and he's just like, "Thank you so much for doing that. I'm so grateful that you did that. So I want to give you a book." And so he gave me a book. It was a Farsi to English dictionary. Mm-hmm. So he's like, "So you can understand the things that we say a little bit better." I was like, "Oh, thank you."
That's cool. Do you still have it?
No, I don't have it. I feel like we moved so many times that
got lost somewhere. Right.
I think I kept it for a long time, though.
So you mentioned that you met your husband on MySpace, and future husband wasn't yet. How did you guys actually meet up? Was he did he have any type of Christian background, or was he just out there doing his thing?
Actually, he's also a pastor's kid. Yeah, so he was a backslidden pastor's kid at the time, and I had no idea. So my dad will always try to hook me up with pastor's sons, and I'm just like, no, I'm not going to date any pastor's sons, because if I date a pastor's son, I could be a pastor's wife one day, and I don't want to do that.
Do you see God answering your parents' prayers even all those years later?
Yeah. It's funny. And so he didn't tell me he was a pastor's kid. There's a lot of stuff that he did not disclose. But we had I want to say 6-month relationship online, where we would, I don't remember what it was called. Maybe it was Skype. We would Skype each other, and we would send each other things. Like, we would order them off Amazon for each other and have them delivered, because Amazon actually will deliver in Afghanistan. So, but only on the basis.
Right.
And we would write each other things, and we would talk about the day that he would propose, and one day he was talking about, like, oh, our kids, they'll be beautiful and they'll look like this and we can name them that. And I'm just like, hold on, dude, we're not even engaged. And so the next thing that he did was he proposed to me on MySpace, and I was like, no.
So you'd never met in person?
Yeah. And so I'm just like,
so he's talking kids and he's never met you in person.
Yeah. And I was just like, we had it all prepared. First off, yes. But second, we had it planned out of how you were supposed to propose to me. So I said yes. And then when you're overseas, you get a week of leave, or 2 weeks. I got 2 weeks of leave. So on those 2 weeks, I went and saw my mom for a week. My mom begged me, please don't come back. Please don't come back, because to Detroit. Because she thought that I was going to find that guy. And I told her, Mom, I'm engaged. I'm engaged to get married to somebody else. And she's like, okay. And so she talked to my now husband on the phone and basically gave her a blessing, and was so thankful, because she said that my dad told her that he saw my future husband, that God told him that I was going to be okay, and that he saw my future husband, and it looked nothing like the guy that I was with at the time.
Right.
and that more of the description fit the husband that I am married to. So.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's awesome. That had to be a comfort too. Just hearing that from your mom, that to me would have been a comfort, because I lost my dad as well. And so just hearing something like that would have been comforting to me.
Yeah. And so it helps me out because my friends just kept saying, don't go. He's going to be an axe murderer or something. He's tricking you. And I'm just like,
no,
because we met online. So.
Right.
And I was just like, it'll be fine.
So how did you guys finally meet up in person? What did that look like?
So he picked me up from the airport on leave. So I spent a week with my mom in Detroit, and I got her hair and nails done and all that stuff. And I got mine done too, because the plan actually was on leave, we were going to get married. It wasn't, he was going to propose to me in person. It was, we were going to get married. So I got my hair and nails done, and then I flew to New York because he actually came back before I did. So he was deployed before me. And when we met, he was finishing out his tour and I was just starting mine. So he was in America and New York, and Fort Drum. And so we ended up getting married. He picked me up from the airport and took me to a hotel, and then he proposed to me. And I want to say 2 days after he proposed is when I went wedding dress shopping, got a dress, and he got a tux. And I didn't really care about the church, or I didn't care about who was going to be there, food, or anything else. I was just like, I have to have my dress. And we did at Justice of the Peace is when we got married. And so I think it was, so that was 3 days. So we had 4 days together, and then I went back to Afghanistan. So we only had 4 days as husband and wife before I had to go back.
And so where was he at that time then? Was he still in the military, or was he getting out, or?
He was active duty. So he was stationed there in New York.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was reserve. So one thing that I didn't know about reserve is that they can't really tell you where you have to live. So I was in the reserves in Inkster, Michigan. But because we got married, I was able to move to Fort Drum, New York. So my unit was either responsible to fly me back there every time I had to do drill, or they had to find me a unit there in Fort Drum. There wasn't a reserve unit there in Fort Drum at the time, and they didn't want to pay to fly me to Michigan. So they were just like, well, if we get deployed again, you'll just come. And I was like, okay. So that was after I got back from deployment. They just kind of.
And so during this time, were both of you still backslidden?
Yes, we were both still backslidden. My husband so I moved in with him in New York. He was able to get housing off base at that time because we had got married. So he had everything set up before I came back from deployment. And my husband calls it the trash can of our lives, because that was when we just kind of went crazy. He would say, like, he would ask people before they entered our homes if they wanted to go to hell because he was driving the bus. So my husband was a different kind of backslidden. I was backslidden, but it was because I just made excuses as to why I couldn't be a Christian at that time, but that I would come back to God eventually. He was a backslidden Christian, but he seemed to be angry with God. Like,
oh, so he sounded more angry.
Yeah. And he had accepted his fate, that he was going to hell and he was going to take people with him. I think that it was because of his upbringing. He came into contact with a lot of religious people in his upbringing, and they kind of gave him a bad taste in his mouth for Christianity.
Right.
And so he actually would believe it when they say, well, God told them to do this or that, and it would always be hurtful toward him. So So he actually
So it
believed
made
them,
him
and
hard, just made him like hard-hearted.
yeah. And that's when I guess I kind of got into worse drugs because my husband actually was into pretty bad stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually started doing just whatever because we're both like we're backslidden, and we both went through war, and we had no way to process any of the things that happened at
Right.
war, and then the trauma of losing my dad plus war on top of that, and all the things that had previously happened to me.
Right.
We were just trying to numb ourselves. The whole that was there that Jesus should feel was so much, it felt so much bigger because of all the things but we were ignoring it. We both knew what the answer was, but we were like just pushing God away, trying to put other things in there.
Right. How old were you both at that time?
Let's see, 1 or 22, 21 probably.
So you were so young, but with just so much trauma already just built up in both of you.
Yeah.
So how long were you both married before you guys just came to that realization, we can't live like this anymore? This isn't going to work.
We came to Christ at 23 years old. So he ended up getting put out of the military. They should have gotten him help for psychological issues, but they didn't.
Right.
He didn't assimilate back into civilian life well.
Right.
I didn't either, but he was the one that they were looking at, and so they ended up just giving him a discharge.
Right. And unfortunately, that is very, very common.
Yeah.
Very common. And then our veterans are just left to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. And so we left New York. I think even then we were kind of spontaneous about moving because he was just like, we're just packing all the things that we can into the car and we're just going to leave. And I was like, okay. So we just pack all the things that we can get in there, and we ended up making like a 44-inch flat screen TV fit we had a 2004 Toyota Avalon. And so we put everything in there and we drove to Michigan first. And we kind of stayed with my mom for a little bit, and we ended up not being able to stay there anymore. So we drove to Colorado, and we stayed.
Why Colorado?
Because that's where my husband is from. He's from
a
little town in Colorado called Manassas. It's like 15 minutes outside of Alamosa, which is the city we got saved in.
Okay.
And so his dad was still the pastor of a church there in Romeo, which is like 5 minutes from Manassas. And we ended up going to his church just because we were living there, but we were still in our sin. We were living in his dad's house, and we didn't want to be disrespectful, so we would go to church there, which is where we actually ended up meeting someone who became a friend of the lady in the Alamosa church who invited us to church. And so
that was, you were attending his dad's church, but you ended up being invited to one of our fellowship churches.
So his dad had a guy who was going there who stopped going to his church, but we became that guy's friend. Fast forward a little bit, we leave his dad's house and we are homeless basically because we can't do all the things that we want to, all the drugs and things that we want to do. We can't do them at his dad's house because we're both pastors' kids. And as soon as we try to go to his dad's house in that state, all that the Holy Spirit just takes all highness or whatever away. So you're going into that area where God is, and it's like, we can't live like this anymore. So we leave and we rather be homeless on the streets of Alamosa. So we come into contact with that guy that we met at his dad's church, and he is friends with Terry from Alamosa. So Terry actually saw us and she fed us tacos. We're homeless at this time. we're homeless and we're living in our car with 4 cats. And she's like, hey, if you guys like those tacos, we're actually having a potluck at the church. You guys should come by. And so I was just like, okay. So in Michigan, it's really, really big for churches to feed and give out clothes and stuff like that, but they don't, a lot of them don't give the gospel at all. So I'm just like, okay, we'll come eat. So what she didn't mention is that the potluck was after the service.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there at the service, and my husband, I don't remember what Pastor Martin was preaching. I remember it was a Wednesday night, and I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, I can't remember what he was preaching, but I remember he said, everybody close your eyes and bow your heads. And I was just sitting there, and God was just pulling on my heart. And I was just like, God, I don't know, because like, okay, I'm going to give my life to you, but I really hope this man raises his hand too. I'm talking about my husband. Just like, because if not, it's going to be very awkward.
Right.
So I raised my hand, and I kind of peeked and looked over, and his hand was in the air too. And I was like, oh, thank God. So we got saved. And
And what year was that?
Let's see. So that was 2011. It was 2011.
You're still fairly young, about what, mid-20s at this point? How long had you been married?
So we got married, so almost 2 years at that point. Trying to do all this crazy stuff on our own.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I'm super excited to hear the second part of your story now, where God just shoots you guys up and starts cleaning things up and puts you, where you're supposed to be. But we're going to say goodbye to our regular listeners right now. We thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to hear the second half of Mary's testimony of what God has done in her life, become a premium subscriber to the Taking the Land podcast. And we will be back in just a moment. Thank you.
You're my unsung hero, and I sing this song for you.
Hi, I'm Mike Ashcraft, pastor currently in Van Nuys, California. Pastor, man of God, your wife left everything to follow you in your dream. Are you going to leave her with nothing? The Bible says, he who doesn't provide for his own is worse than an unbeliever and has denied the faith. As men of God, we're ready to stand before God due to tragedy at any moment's notice. But what about our families? What happens to them if we were to die? There's an easy financial solution so that they don't have to go through poverty or destitution. Call me today, 310-403-6471. That's 310-403-6471.